Alex stood amidst a symphony of cardboard and bubble wrap, a faint smile playing on their lips. The scent of fresh paint and new beginnings mingled with a lingering aroma of old money and polished brass. This was it. The 40th floor of the Pinnacle, their new home. A testament to ambition and a fresh start. The Chicago skyline, a jagged crown of steel and glass, glittered beyond the panoramic windows, a promise of endless possibilities. Alex, a driven architect with a penchant for historical preservation, had been drawn to the Pinnacle not just for its luxurious amenities, but for its storied past. Built in the Roaring '20s, it was a marvel of Art Deco design, a monument to a bygone era of opulence and daring. The recent, meticulous renovation had breathed new life into its grand halls, seamlessly blending vintage charm with cutting-edge technology. And at the heart of this technological marvel were the elevators, sleek, silent, and supposedly the smartest in the city. As Alex surveyed the spacious living room, a soft knock echoed from the hallway. It was Mrs. Gable, their next-door neighbor, a woman whose silver hair was as meticulously coiffed as her perfectly pressed floral dress. Her eyes, sharp and inquisitive, darted around the still unpacked apartment. "Welcome to the Pinnacle, dearie," she chirped, her voice a surprising blend of sweetness and gravel. "Settling in, are we?" Alex offered a polite smile. "Just about. It's quite a place, Mrs. Gable. The views are incredible." Mrs. Gable nodded, her gaze lingering on the ornate molding near the ceiling. "Oh, it has character, this building. Plenty of it. They don't build them like this anymore, do they?" Her smile seemed to tighten, a fleeting shadow crossing her features before it vanished. "Well, if you need anything at all, don't hesitate to ask. I'm just next door." With a final lingering glance, Mrs. Gable retreated, leaving Alex with a faint sense of unease. Character? The word hung in the air, a subtle discord in the otherwise harmonious symphony of their new life. Later that evening, exhausted from unpacking, Alex decided to grab a quick dinner from a nearby bistro. Stepping into the elevator, the polished chrome gleamed under the soft, recessed lighting. Alex pressed the lobby button, and the doors slid shut with a whisper. The ascent was smooth, almost imperceptible, a testament to the elevator's advanced engineering. Then it happened, a sudden, jarring lurch. The lights flickered, plunging the car into momentary darkness, then back to a sickly, flickering glow. A low, guttural groan seemed to emanate from the very core of the building, a sound that vibrated through the soles of Alex's feet. The car seemed to drop, just for a fraction of a second, a stomach-lurching sensation that left Alex gasping. The floor numbers on the panel blurred, then reformed, settling back on 40. Alex gripped the handrail, heart hammering against their ribs. Just a glitch, they told themselves, new building jitters. But as the elevator continued its descent, a cold dread began to coil in their stomach. The doors hissed open on the lobby floor, revealing a fleeting, distorted reflection in the polished steel of the elevator doors, a screaming face, contorted in terror, gone in an instant. Alex blinked, shaking their head. It must have been a trick of the light, a reflection of their own startled expression. Dismissing it as an overactive imagination fueled by exhaustion, Alex stepped out into the bustling lobby, the sounds of the city a welcome distraction. They ordered their food, trying to shake off the lingering unease. As they waited, their phone buzzed. An anonymous text message. Alex frowned, opening it. "You're not alone. He sees you." The words chilled Alex to the bone. He? Who was he? And how did this person know about the brief, terrifying incident in the elevator? A cold, undeniable certainty settled over Alex. This wasn't just a glitch. This was something else entirely. And someone, or something, was watching. The cryptic text message had burrowed deep into Alex's mind, a persistent splinter of unease that refused to be dislodged. The initial shock had given way to a gnawing suspicion, a feeling that the polished facade of the pinnacle hid something far more sinister than mere character. The incident in the elevator, once dismissed as a fluke, now replayed in Alex's memory with chilling clarity. The sudden drop, the flickering lights, the distorted reflection of a screening face. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a warning. Over the next few days, the elevator anomalies escalated with an unnerving precision. What began as subtle quirks morphed into overt acts of defiance. One morning, on the way to work, Alex watched in growing horror as the digital display flickered wildly, cycling through floor numbers that didn't exist in the building's blueprint. 99, 103, 150. Before settling on a floor Alex hadn't selected. The doors hissed open to reveal a stretch of dark, unfinished corridor, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and something metallic like old blood. The lights in the corridor were dead, swallowed by an oppressive gloom that seemed to stretch into infinity. Before Alex could react, the doors slid shut with a soft click, and the elevator resumed its normal ascent, as if nothing had happened. The incident lasted mere seconds, but the image of that desolate, unlit hallway was seared into Alex's mind. Another time, the elevator stopped abruptly between floors, the soft, ambient music cutting out to be replaced by a faint, rhythmic thumping from beneath the car, like a massive, unseen heart beating in the building's core. Alex pressed the emergency call button, but only static answered. The air grew heavy, charged with an unseen presence, and Alex felt a prickling sensation on their skin, as if countless unseen eyes were watching. Just as panic threatened to overwhelm them, the elevator lurched, the lights flickered back on, and it continued its journey as if waking from a brief, unsettling dream. These incidents, always brief and always leaving Alex questioning their own perception, began to take a severe psychological toll. Sleep became a battleground of fragmented nightmares, falling elevators, shadowy figures in dark corridors, and the incessant, rhythmic thumping. During the day, Alex found themselves scrutinizing every shadow in their meticulously designed apartment, every creak of the old building, every distant hum of machinery. The once luxurious high-rise, a symbol of their ambition, now felt like a gilded cage, subtly oppressive, its grandeur masking a pervasive, creeping dread. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Alex decided to formally report the issues to building management. They approached the sleek, modern reception desk in the lobby, the same desk where the overly cheerful concierge had greeted them on move-in day. Today, however, a new face sat behind the desk. A man with an unnervingly wide smile and eyes that seemed to hold a perpetual, unsettling twinkle. He introduced himself as Mr. Sterling, the new building manager. Alex recounted the escalating elevator malfunctions, the strange stops, the unsettling visions, and the anonymous text message. Mr. Sterling listened, his smile never faltering, his head tilted slightly, as if listening to a particularly amusing anecdote. When Alex finished, he clapped his hands together, a sound that was far too loud in the hushed lobby. "Ah, yes, the elevators," he boomed, his voice echoing slightly. "A truly magnificent system, wouldn't you agree? Cutting edge." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though his smile remained plastered on his face. "You see, Mr./Ms. Alex, with such advanced technology, there are always teething issues. A new system, you understand. It's simply settling in, like a grand old ship finding its sea legs." He waved a dismissive hand. The flickering lights, the odd stops, perfectly normal. The system is optimizing itself, learning the building's rhythms. And as for any unsettling visions or cryptic messages, he chuckled, a dry, humorless sound, well, the Pinnacle is a very vibrant building, full of life. Perhaps your imagination is simply adjusting to the vibrancy? His reassurance was anything but. It was too enthusiastic, too dismissive, too unsettling. His eyes, though twinkling, held a strange, almost predatory gleam. Alex felt a cold knot tighten in their stomach. Mr. Sterling wasn't just ignorant. He was actively, unsettlingly complicit. His words, meant to soothe, only amplified Alex's suspicion. The building management wasn't just dismissing their concerns. They were part of the problem, perhaps even part of the thing that was causing the problem. The thought sent a shiver down Alex's spine. The Pinnacle wasn't just haunted. It was being managed by something sinister. Alex left the office. The unsettling image of Mr. Sterling's unwavering smile burned into their mind, the realization dawning that they were truly alone in this fight. The unsettling encounter with Mr. Sterling had solidified Alex's conviction. This wasn't just a faulty elevator or an overactive imagination. The Pinnacle was sick, and its illness was contagious. The psychological toll deepened. Every creak of the building, every distant hum of machinery, every shadow in their meticulously designed apartment felt laden with menace. Sleep offered no respite, replaced by vivid, terrifying visions that bled into waking hours. The elevator, now a malevolent entity in Alex's mind, became a conduit for these waking nightmares. One afternoon, rushing to a meeting, Alex stepped into the elevator. The doors hissed shut, and instead of the familiar ascent, the car shuddered violently. The lights flickered, then died, plunging Alex into absolute darkness. A low, guttural groan vibrated through the floor, followed by a cacophony of whispers, faint at first and growing in intensity. They were not words, but a chorus of desperate, disembodied pleas, punctuated by sharp, agonizing screams. The air grew heavy, thick with the metallic tongue of old blood and the acrid scent of burning flesh. Then, a terrifying vision. The doors, though still closed, became translucent, revealing a scene from the building's past. Alex saw construction workers, tiny figures silhouetted against a blinding flash of light, plummeting from impossible heights. Their screams, now deafening, filled the confined space of the elevator. One figure, falling in slow motion, seemed to look directly at Alex, its face contorted in a silent, agonizing scream. Alex felt the sickening thud of impact reverberate through the floor, a phantom sensation that left them gasping for air. The vision snapped away as abruptly as it had appeared, the lights flickering back on, the elevator resuming its journey as if nothing had transpired. Alex leaned against the cold metal wall, heart hammering, the phantom smell of smoke and blood clinging to their clothes. Driven by a desperate need to understand, to fight back against this encroaching madness, Alex plunged into the building's history. The internet became their lifeline, a rabbit hole of old newspaper archives, forgotten architectural journals, and obscure local history blogs. They unearthed articles detailing a shocking number of accidents during the Pinnacle's original construction in the 1920s. Falls, collapses, strange disappearances. There were whispers of a devastating fire in the 1950s that claimed dozens of lives, hushed up by powerful figures. Most unsettling were the recurring mentions of the original architect, a brilliant but reclusive man named Elias Thorne, who vanished without a trace shortly after the building's completion, leaving behind a legacy of architectural genius and unsettling rumors. One particular forum post, buried deep within a forgotten corner of the internet, mentioned a reclusive historian, Dr. Eris Thorne, a distant relative of Elias, who was said to possess an unparalleled knowledge of Chicago's hidden architectural secrets. Alex, desperate, found an old address and, armed with a sense of grim determination, made the journey to a quiet, unassuming brownstone on the city's north side. Dr. Thorne was a frail man, his face a road map of wrinkles. His eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharp, knowing glint. He listened patiently as Alex recounted their experiences, his expression unreadable. When Alex finished, a long silence hung in the air, broken only by the ticking of an antique grandfather clock. "You're not the first," Dr. Thorne finally said, his voice a raspy whisper. "And you won't be the last." Alex's breath hitched. You believe me?" Dr. Thorne nodded slowly. "Believe you, my dear? I've lived it." He rose, moving with surprising agility for his age, and led Alex to a hidden study, its walls lined with dusty tomes and ancient maps. He pulled a loose brick from the fireplace, revealing a small, concealed compartment. Inside, nestled amongst yellowed documents, was a collection of strange artifacts: a tarnished silver locket, a crudely carved wooden idol, and a series of unsettling, almost ritualistic drawings. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy. My great-grandfather Elias, Dr. Thorne began, his voice laced with a tremor. He wasn't just an architect. He was an seeker. He believed there were forces beneath the city, ancient energies that could be harnessed. He found something deep beneath where the pinnacle now stands, something powerful. Dr. Thorne's eyes met Alex's, wide with a mixture of fear and a strange, almost manic obsession. He tried to control it, to bind it to the building, but it was too strong. It consumed him, and it has been feeding ever since. He then revealed his own experiences, the subtle shifts in reality, the whispers in the dead of night, the feeling of being watched. He showed Alex his own journal, filled with frantic, increasingly paranoid entries, detailing his attempts to understand and resist the entity's influence. He had been too afraid to speak out, fearing for his sanity, fearing for his life. But now, seeing Alex, he knew he couldn't remain silent. The developers, Dr. Thorne continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, they found some of Elias's research during the renovation. They didn't understand what they were dealing with. They thought they could exploit it, use its power for their own gain. They disturbed something ancient, something that should have remained buried. And now it's awake. And it's hungry. He gestured to the drawings, revealing symbols that Alex recognized from obscure historical texts, symbols associated with forgotten cults and forbidden rituals. There was a society, a secret order that Elias was part of. They believed in the power of these energies. They helped him. And I fear they are still active, still trying to harness it. Alex stared at the artifacts, the drawings, the old man's trembling hands. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. The elevator wasn't just haunted. It was a living, breathing extension of an ancient, malevolent force, awakened and amplified by human greed and a forgotten, sinister pact. The horror was no longer confined to the psychological. It was a tangible, ancient evil, woven into the very fabric of the pinnacle. And now, thanks to the developers, it was reaching out, its tendrils extending far beyond the building's walls. The fight was no longer just for Alex's sanity. It was for their very soul, and perhaps for the souls of everyone trapped within the building's cursed embrace. The revelation from Dr. Thorne had shattered Alex's remaining illusions of safety. The pinnacle wasn't just a building. It was a cage, and the elevator, its beating, malevolent heart. The knowledge of the ancient entity, the developer's greed, and the chilling possibility of a secret society still active had transformed Alex's fear into a desperate, burning need for action. But action, as Alex was about to discover, came at a terrifying price. It was late. The city lights a distant, shimmering tapestry beyond Alex's window. The weight of Dr. Thorne's words pressed down, suffocating. Alex decided to take a walk, to clear their head, to escape the oppressive silence of their apartment. They stepped into the elevator, the polished chrome now reflecting not just their own weary face, but the chilling possibility of an unseen presence. Alex pressed the lobby button, the familiar soft hum of the machinery, a deceptive lullaby. Then the world tilted. The elevator car shuddered violently, a bone-jarring tremor that sent Alex stumbling. The lights, already dim, flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging the car into an absolute suffocating darkness. The emergency lights, usually a comforting glow, remained stubbornly off. A low metallic groan echoed from the shaft, a sound of immense, tortured metal, followed by a sickening lurch. The car plunged, not a gentle drop, but a free fall, the air rushing past Alex's ears, the sensation of gravity abandoning them. Alex screamed, a raw primal sound that was swallowed by the roaring wind in the shaft. Just as quickly as it began, the plunge stopped with a violent, jarring impact that threw Alex against the wall. A sharp pain shot through their shoulder. The car hung suspended, swaying precariously. The emergency phone, a beacon of hope in any other circumstance, was dead, its small red light dark. Alex fumbled for their phone, but there was no signal, just a mocking no-service message. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at Alex's throat. The darkness was absolute, a living, breathing thing that pressed in from all sides. The air grew impossibly cold and suffocatingly hot, shifting with an unnatural rhythm. Whispers began, faint at first, then growing louder, swirling around Alex like a vortex of disembodied voices. They were not words, but a cacophony of fear, despair, and agonizing pleas, a chorus of the building's past victims. Alex pressed themselves against the cold wall, trying to make sense of the auditory assault, trying to find a source. Then the visions began. The walls of the elevator car seemed to ripple, becoming translucent, revealing fleeting, skeletal figures pressed against the glass, their eyeless sockets staring in, their mouths open in silent screams. They were trying to get in, their bony fingers scraping against the invisible barrier. The air filled with the stench of decay and ozone, a sickening combination that made Alex gag. Alex squeezed their eyes shut, but the images were burned into their mind, flickering behind their eyelids. When they opened them again, their own reflection in the polished steel of the elevator doors was grotesquely distorted, their face contorted into a monstrous visage, whispering self-doubt and despair. You're weak. You're alone. You deserve this. The entity was not just showing them horrors. It was showing them their horrors. Just as Alex felt their sanity fraying, a faint crackle emanated from the emergency phone. Hope, a fragile, desperate thing, flickered. Alex lunged for it, pressing the call button repeatedly. The crackling intensified, then a voice, distorted and echoing, filled the small space. It wasn't building security. It was a voice that sounded eerily, sickeningly like Alex's own. You think you can escape? The voice whispered, a chilling parody of Alex's own internal monologue. You think you're strong? Remember the night you cried yourself to sleep after? The voice dredged up a forgotten, painful memory, a moment of profound vulnerability and failure from Alex's past. Remember how you failed? How you let them down? The entity wasn't just a malevolent force. It was a parasitic intelligence, tapping directly into Alex's mind, plucking out their deepest fears. their most guarded insecurities, and weaponizing them. It knew things, intimate details that no one else could possibly know. The psychological horror deepened, twisting the knife in Alex's already fractured psyche. This wasn't just about the building. It was about Alex's very soul. The torment continued, the distorted voice whispering more secrets, more failures, more fears, each revelation a fresh wound. Alex curled into a ball, hands clamped over their ears, but the voice was inside their head, inescapable. They were trapped, not just in a metal box, but within their own mind, at the mercy of an entity that knew them better than they knew themselves. The line between reality and hallucination blurred, then dissolved entirely. Alex was forced to confront the horrors directly, experiencing a profound psychological breakdown, a complete unraveling of their sense of self. Hours later, or perhaps only minutes, Alex couldn't tell. The elevator lurched again, this time upwards. The lights flickered back on, revealing the grime and dust that had accumulated on the car's interior, a stark contrast to its usual pristine state. The doors hissed open, not to the lobby, but to a maintenance floor, empty and echoing. A lone security guard, looking bewildered, stood by the open doors, having heard the emergency alarm finally blare. He helped Alex out, his eyes wide with concern at Alex's disheveled appearance and vacant stare. Alex was rescued, but the experience left them deeply traumatized. The physical bruises would heal, but the psychological scars were deep, perhaps permanent. They were now utterly convinced that the elevator was sentient, malevolent, and had a direct line to their innermost thoughts. The building management, when confronted, continued to dismiss their claims, attributing Alex's state to stress and exhaustion, isolating Alex further. But Alex knew the truth. The entity was real, and it was far more insidious than they could have ever imagined. The descent had ended, but the true horror had only just begun. Alex was no longer just a resident. They were a target, marked by an entity that had tasted their fear and found it delicious. The descent had left Alex a hollowed-out shell, the echoes of the entity's whispers still reverberating in their mind. The physical bruises were fading, but the psychological scars were deep, raw, and constantly throbbing. Sleep was a luxury Alex could no longer afford, haunted by the skeletal figures and the distorted reflection of their own screaming face. The building management's dismissive attitude, coupled with Mr. Sterling's unsettling cheerfulness, had solidified Alex's isolation. They were truly alone in this fight, or so they thought. Dr. Thorne, however, was a lifeline. His shared experiences, his deep knowledge of Elias Thorne's dark legacy, and the chilling artifacts he possessed provided a tangible anchor in Alex's unraveling reality. The old historian, frail but resolute, became Alex's reluctant co-conspirator. Together, they delved deeper into the building's hidden history, driven by a desperate need to understand the entity, and more importantly, to find a way to stop it. Their research led them to the original blueprints of the pinnacle, stored in a dusty, forgotten archive in the city's historical society. What they found was more horrifying than anything they had imagined. Beneath the meticulously drawn plans for the grand lobby and the luxurious apartments lay a hidden sub-basement, not designed for utilities or storage, but for something far more sinister. It was a complex network of tunnels and chambers, leading to a central, circular room directly beneath the building's main elevator shaft. And in the center of that room, marked with symbols identical to those on Dr. Thorne's unearthed idol, was a massive, pulsating energy source, labeled simply, the heart. This wasn't just a disturbed burial ground. It was an ancient, malevolent artifact, a relic of a forgotten, pre-Columbian civilization that had once occupied the land. Elias Thorne, in his misguided pursuit of power, had not merely built over it. He had incorporated it into the very foundation of the pinnacle, believing he could harness its energy. The entity wasn't just haunting the building. It was the building, its consciousness intertwined with the structure, its power flowing through the elevator system, its tendrils reaching into every corner. But the most damning discovery came from a series of encrypted emails and financial records Dr. Thorne managed to unearth, detailing the recent renovation. The current developers, a powerful, ruthless corporation known for their aggressive acquisition tactics, had indeed discovered the heart during the initial excavation. Instead of reporting it, they had seen an opportunity. They believed they could tap into its latent energy, not for some ritualistic purpose, but for pure, unadulterated profit. They had installed the smart elevator system as a direct conduit, a way to channel and amplify the entity's power, unknowingly feeding it with the fear and life force of the residents. The luxury, the modernity, the cutting-edge technology. It was all a facade, a sophisticated trap designed to lure victims and empower the entity. This added a chilling layer of human villainy to the supernatural horror, a cold, calculated greed that was almost as terrifying as the entity itself. Armed with this irrefutable evidence, Alex knew they couldn't keep silent. They had to expose the truth, not just about the entity, but about the developers who had knowingly unleashed it. Alex drafted a detailed report, compiling all the evidence, the blueprints, the financial records, Dr. Thorne's historical research, and their own harrowing experiences. They contacted a trusted journalist, a former colleague known for their investigative prowess, and scheduled a meeting. But the entity's influence, as Alex was about to discover, extended far beyond the confines of the pinnacle. The morning of the meeting, Alex's laptop, containing the only digital copy of the report, crashed, its hard drive inexplicably wiped clean. The journalist, upon hearing of the setback, became unreachable, their phone disconnected, their email bouncing back. Dr. Thorne's research files, meticulously organized, were found scattered and water-damaged, as if a pipe had burst directly over his study. Every attempt Alex made to regather the evidence, to reach out to other contacts, was met with inexplicable obstacles, sudden power outages, internet blackouts, even strange, minor accidents that delayed their progress. It was subtle, insidious, and terrifyingly effective. The entity wasn't just confined to the elevator. It was a pervasive force, capable of manipulating technology, disrupting communications, and sowing chaos in the outside world. It was protecting itself, its influence a vast, unseen web stretching across the city, ensuring its secrets remained buried. The realization was a cold, hard slap to Alex's face. The entity wasn't just feeding on fear. It was actively fighting back, its intelligence far greater than they had anticipated. The fight was no longer just about survival. It was a desperate struggle against an unseen enemy that could reach them anywhere, anytime. Desperate, Alex turned to Mrs. Gable, the eccentric neighbor who had initially dismissed Alex's concerns, had been subtly affected by the escalating strangeness in the building. She had witnessed a few minor, undeniable manifestations of the elevator's power, a flickering light that pulsed with a sickly green hue, a momentary drop that sent a shiver down her spine, a faint, disembodied whisper that seemed to call her name. Alex, with Dr. Thorne's help, presented the evidence, the blueprints, the historical accounts, and the chilling implications of the developer's actions. Mrs. Gable, her eyes wide with dawning horror, finally believed. Her initial skepticism crumbled, replaced by a grim determination. The fight had just gained an unlikely but much-needed ally. The entity had underestimated the power of human connection and the resolve of those it sought to control. The truth, however elusive, was beginning to unveil itself, and with it, a glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness. The fragile alliance forged in the crucible of fear and revelation was Alex's only hope. Mrs. Gable, her initial skepticism replaced by a grim, almost desperate resolve, had become an unexpected pillar of support. Dr. Thorne, though increasingly frail and haunted by his own experiences, remained the intellectual core of their desperate endeavor. The entity's pervasive influence, its ability to manipulate not just the building, but the very fabric of reality outside its walls, had made one thing terrifyingly clear. They couldn't simply expose the developers or flee. The entity was a parasite, and Alex, along with every other resident of the Pinnacle, was its host. It was feeding, growing stronger with every flicker of fear, every whispered secret, every life consumed by its insatiable hunger. The elevator, once a symbol of modern convenience, was its primary tool, a pulsing conduit of malevolence. Their shared knowledge, pieced together from Elias Thorne's fragmented research and Dr. Thorne's own chilling observations, painted a horrifying picture. The entity wasn't merely a ghost. It was an ancient, pre-human intelligence, awakened by the developer's greed. It fed on psychic energy, on fear, on belief. And the more it fed, the more it manifested, twisting reality to its will. Their only chance, Dr. Thorne theorized, was to sever its connection to the heart, the ancient artifact buried deep beneath the building. This would starve it, weaken it, perhaps even banish it back to the void from which it came. The plan was audacious, dangerous, and their only option. They convened in Alex's apartment, the blinds drawn, the lights low, the air thick with unspoken tension. Dr. Thorne spread out Elias's original blueprints, now annotated with his own frantic scribbles and warnings. Mrs. Gable, surprisingly adept with technology, had managed to hack into the building's smart system, providing them with real-time data on elevator movements and energy fluctuations, the entity's pulse. Their plan was simple in theory, terrifying in execution. Descend to the sub-basement, locate the heart, and perform a ritual of disruption, a counterspell derived from Elias Thorne's own twisted research, designed to sever the entity's link to its power source. As Dr. Thorne meticulously explained the ritual, his voice grew increasingly strained, his hands trembling as he pointed to arcane symbols on the blueprint. Alex noticed a subtle shift in his demeanor. His eyes, usually sharp, seemed to glaze over occasionally, a faint, unsettling smile playing on his lips, quickly suppressed. Mrs. Gable, too, seemed unusually quiet, her gaze fixed on the elevator status screen, a strange, almost vacant expression on her face. Alex dismissed it as stress, the weight of their desperate mission pressing down on them all. The ritual requires a sacrifice, Dr. Thorne rasped, his voice barely audible. Not of life, no, but of connection, a severing of ties, a binding of intent. He looked at Alex, his eyes suddenly clear, but filled with a profound, unsettling sadness. It must be done by one who is attuned, one who has felt its touch most deeply. Alex felt a cold dread creep up their spine. They had felt its touch more than anyone. They were the most attuned. Was this it? Was this the sacrifice? A part of them, the part that had been so utterly broken by the entity, almost welcomed the idea of an end. Any end. Just as Alex was about to speak, Mrs. Gable let out a soft gasp. Her finger was pointed at the elevator status screen. The main elevator, the one they planned to use for their descent, was moving. Not to a floor, but between them, a frantic, erratic dance of numbers, accompanied by a low, insistent hum that vibrated through the floorboards of Alex's apartment. The entity knew. It was reacting. It was fighting back. "We must go now," Dr. Thorne urged, his voice gaining a sudden, unnatural strength. Before it binds us." They rushed the service elevator, a grimy utilitarian contraption rarely used by residents. As they stepped inside, Dr. Thorne fumbled with a small, leather-bound book, muttering incantations under his breath. Mrs. Gable, her face pale, clutched a small, ornate key, the key to the sub-basement access panel. The doors hissed shut, and the elevator began its slow, grinding descent. Midway down, the car shuddered. The lights flickered, then stabilized. A faint, almost imperceptible hum filled the air, different from the usual machinery. Alex looked at Dr. Thorne, who was now staring intently at the floor numbers, a strange, almost triumphant glint in his eyes. Mrs. Gable, too, had a peculiar, serene smile on her face, her grip on the key tightening. "It's working," Dr. Thorne whispered, his voice laced with an unsettling satisfaction. "It's drawing us in, just as Elias intended." Alex's blood ran cold. Intended? Elias Thorne had tried to bind the entity, not destroy it. And Dr. Thorne, his descendant, had spoken of Elias's seekers and their attempts to harness its power. A horrifying realization dawned. The twist wasn't a betrayal in the traditional sense. It was far more insidious. Dr. Thorne wasn't trying to destroy the entity. He was trying to control it. And Mrs. Gable, perhaps unknowingly, was part of his plan. "What are you talking about?" Alex demanded, their voice sharp with dawning horror. What did Elias intend? Dr. Thorne turned, his eyes now completely devoid of their usual warmth, replaced by a cold, calculating gleam. The faint smile on his lips widened, revealing teeth that seemed a shade too long, too sharp. Elias understood true power, Alex. He understood that some forces are not meant to be destroyed, but to be mastered. The developers, in their crude attempts, merely awakened it. But we will bind it. We will make it ours. Mrs. Gable, her serene smile unwavering, reached out a hand, her touch surprisingly strong. "Don't fight it, dearie. It's for the best. A new era. A new ascension." Her eyes, too, held that unsettling, vacant gleam. She wasn't a willing participant. She was a puppet, an unwilling host, subtly manipulated by the entity, or perhaps by Dr. Thorne, who was himself a victim of the entity's long-term influence, a legacy passed down through his bloodline. The elevator continued its descent, but now it felt less like a journey to a sub-basement and more like a plunge into the abyss. Alex was trapped not just with a malevolent entity, but with allies who were either compromised or actively working towards a horrifying, unforeseen agenda. The pact wasn't to destroy the entity. It was to control it, to unleash it in a new, terrifying way. The battle for the pinnacle had just become a battle for Alex's very soul and the fate of the city itself. The true horror was not the monster in the machine, but the monsters who sought to wield its power. The descent into the sub-basement was a plunge into the very maw of the beast. The service elevator, usually a mundane contraption, now felt like a coffin, its grimy walls closing in, the air thick with the metallic tongue of fear and the acrid scent of ozone. Dr. Thorne's chilling revelation that Elias had sought to master the entity, not destroy it, echoed in Alex's mind, a horrifying counterpoint to the rhythmic groan of the descending cables. Mrs. Gable, her eyes vacant, her serene smile unnerving, stood beside Dr. Thorne, a silent, complicit puppet in a game Alex was only just beginning to understand. As the elevator car reached its lowest point, the doors hissed open, not to a concrete floor, but to a vast, cavernous space, dimly lit by an unearthly, pulsating red glow. The air was heavy, oppressive, vibrating with a low, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very stone. This was not a sub-basement. It was a forgotten temple, a subterranean cathedral to a malevolent god. Ancient, crude carvings adorned the rough-hewn walls, depicting grotesque figures in various states of torment, their faces contorted in silent screams. In the center of the chamber, directly beneath the elevator shaft, stood a massive obsidian monolith, pulsating with the same sickly red light that permeated the air. This was the heart. "Welcome, Alex," Dr. Thorne's voice, now deep and resonant, boomed through the chamber, no longer the frail whisper of an old man. His eyes glowed with the same red light as the monolith, his smile a predatory baring of teeth. to the true heart of the pinnacle, to the source of all power. Mrs. Gable, with an unnatural grace, moved to a smaller, intricately carved altar beside the monolith, her hands moving with practiced ease as she arranged a collection of strange, organic-looking implements. She was not merely an unwilling host. She was a vessel, a conduit for the entity's will. "You thought you could fight it?" Dr. Thorne scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. "You thought you could expose it? Foolish child, this entity, it is beyond your comprehension. It is ancient, it is eternal, and it feeds." He extended a hand towards the monolith, and a tendril of black, shimmering energy snaked out, wrapping around his arm, making his veins glow with the same red light. "It feeds on belief. Every time you doubted your sanity, every time you feared its presence, every time you believed in its existence, you fed it, you nurtured it, you made it stronger." Alex's blood ran cold. The revelation was a psychological blow, far more devastating than any physical attack. All their efforts, all their fear, all their desperate attempts to understand and fight, it had all been fuel. The more they struggled, the more they believed, the more powerful the entity became. It was a horrifying, inescapable paradox. "And now," Dr. Thorne continued, his voice rising to a fever pitch, "it is ready to transcend, to shed its physical form and become omnipresent. And you, Alex, will be its final offering, the culmination of its feast." Suddenly, the elevator car above them began to groan, the metal twisting and groaning as if in agony. Cables, thick as pythons, snaked down from the shaft, their ends writhing, seeking purchase. The polished chrome of the elevator car began to ripple, to melt, to reform into grotesque organic shapes. The control panel became a gaping maw, lined with jagged, razor-sharp teeth, emitting a low, guttural growl. The walls of the car pulsed with a sickly green light, and screaming faces, distorted and agonized, began to emerge from the metal, their eyes wide with terror. The elevator was no longer a machine. It was a living, breathing extension of the entity, a monstrous biomechanical horror. "The ascent begins." Dr. Thorne shrieked, his face contorted in a grotesque parody of ecstasy. "The pinnacle will be its new body, and Chicago will be its playground." Alex knew then that there was no reasoning, no escape. This was the final showdown. The battle was not just for their life, but for the souls of every resident trapped within the pinnacle, for the very essence of the city itself. The entity, now fully manifested through the grotesque transformation of the elevator, lunged. Its cables, like writhing tentacles, lashed out, tearing at the ancient stone, sending debris flying. The air filled with the deafening roar of tortured metal and the entity's triumphant, echoing shriek. Alex dodged a sweeping cable, the wind of its passage whipping their hair. They had to sever the connection. They had to destroy the heart. But how? Dr. Thorne, empowered by the entity, moved with unnatural speed, blocking their path. Mrs. Gable, her eyes now completely black, lunged, her strength terrifying. Alex was caught between the two, the monstrous elevator above and the malevolent forces below. In a desperate move, Alex feigned a retreat, drawing Dr. Thorne and Mrs. Gable closer to the monolith. As they closed in, Alex spun, grabbing a loose piece of rebar from the crumbling wall. With a guttural cry, they plunged it into the pulsating obsidian of the heart. A deafening shriek tore through the chamber, a sound that seemed to rip the very fabric of reality. The monolith pulsed violently and cracked, a spiderweb of fissures spreading across its surface. The red light flickered, dimmed, then died. The monstrous elevator above them shrieked, its cables recoiling, its grotesque form dissolving back into twisted metal. Dr. Thorne screamed, a sound of pure agony, as the black tendrils of energy retracted from his body, leaving him a withered, desiccated husk. Mrs. Gable collapsed, her eyes rolling back, her body limp. The entity was weakened, banished for now. But the victory was Pyrrhic. The chamber began to crumble, the ancient stone groaning under the strain. Alex, battered and bruised, dragged themselves towards the service elevator, the echoes of the entity's shriek still ringing in their ears. They had survived, but at what cost? The building was damaged, its secrets exposed, its malevolent heart shattered. But the entity, as Alex knew with a chilling certainty, was not truly gone. It had merely retreated, a wounded beast waiting for its next opportunity to feed. The silence that descended upon the chamber was not one of peace, but of heavy, lingering dread. The battle was over, but the war, Alex knew, had only just begun. The silence that descended upon the pinnacle was not one of peace, but of heavy, lingering dread. The sub-basement, once a pulsating chamber of malevolence, was now a crumbling ruin. The obsidian monolith shattered, its power seemingly dispersed. Dr. Thorne lay a desiccated husk, a grim testament to the entity's fury. Mrs. Gable, though alive, remained unresponsive, her eyes vacant, her mind lost in the abyss from which the entity had briefly emerged. Alex, battered and bruised, had managed to drag themselves back to the service elevator, the echoes of the entity's shriek still ringing in their ears, the phantom stench of ozone and decay clinging to their clothes. The building, too, bore the scars of the confrontation. Cracks spiderwebbed across the marble lobby. The smart elevators remained stubbornly offline, and a pervasive chill permeated the air, a cold reminder of the terror that had unfolded. The residents, shaken by the unexplained tremors and power outages, began to evacuate, their fear a palpable thing that hung in the air like a shroud. Mr. Sterling, the unsettling building manager, was nowhere to be found, his perpetual smile replaced by a void of absence. Alex returned to their apartment, not to rest, but to face the silence. The once luxurious space now felt cavernous, haunted by the ghosts of what had transpired. The Chicago skyline, once a symbol of promise, now seemed to mock them, its glittering lights a stark contrast to the darkness that had consumed their world. They had survived. The entity was banished, for now. But the victory was Pyrrhic, the cost immeasurable. Days bled into weeks. The pinnacle remained largely empty, a monument to a horror that few understood. Alex tried to resume a semblance of normal life, but the world had irrevocably shifted. The once familiar hum of the city now seemed to carry a faint, rhythmic thumping, like a distant, unseen heart. The reflection in the mirror sometimes seemed to flicker, revealing a momentary distortion, a fleeting glimpse of something else lurking beneath the surface. Sleep, when it came, was still a battleground, but the nightmares had changed. They were no longer about being trapped. They were about being free, but with a chilling sense of something else inside. One evening, months after the confrontation, Alex found themselves drawn to the abandoned lobby of the pinnacle. The air was thick with dust and the scent of disuse. The main elevators, still offline, stood like silent sentinels. Alex approached one, its polished chrome now dull, reflecting only a distorted, shadowy figure. They reached out, their fingers tracing the cold metal. A faint hum, almost imperceptible, vibrated beneath their fingertips. The lights in the lobby flickered, just for a second, then stabilized. Alex's phone buzzed. An anonymous text message. Alex frowned, a sense of déjà vu washing over them. They opened it. "You're not alone. We see you. And we are hungry." The words chilled Alex to the bone, not with fear, but with a dawning, horrifying understanding. The entity wasn't gone. It hadn't been banished. It had merely found a new host, a new conduit. Alex. The rebar had shattered the heart, but in doing so, it had opened a new pathway, a direct link to Alex's own being. The entity, weakened but not destroyed, had latched onto the strongest, most attuned mind it could find in its moment of vulnerability. Alex's relentless pursuit, their unwavering belief in its existence, their very fear, had made them the perfect vessel. Alex looked at their reflection in the dull chrome of the elevator door. Their eyes, usually a clear, determined blue, now held a faint, unsettling glint of sickly green. A color Alex had only seen in the emergency button of the elevator during its most malevolent manifestations. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on their lips, a smile that was not entirely their own. The rhythmic thumping, once distant, now resonated deep within their own chest. The entity was not tied to the building anymore. It was tied to Alex. It was inside Alex. Alex turned and walked out of the pinnacle, not as a survivor, but as a carrier. The horror was not over. It had merely changed its form, found a new way to spread. The city of Chicago, and perhaps the world, was now unknowingly at the mercy of an ancient evil, walking among them disguised in human form. The battle for the pinnacle had ended, but the war for humanity's souls had just begun, with Alex as its unwilling, unwitting vanguard. The final thought, a chilling whisper from within, echoed in Alex's mind. The ascent continues.